I'll make a motion.
Got a motion on the table, all in favor? That is carried. Our first item of business is a public hearing that was scheduled and advertised as a statutory requirement. As proposed bylaw 556-25, a land use bylaw amendment. Aletta will confirm there were no written submissions, no one registered to speak. Is that correct?
I confirm that.
I assume everybody is here for something other based on what I think you're all here for, but I'll ask the question anyway. Is there anyone here present who wishes to speak for the public hearing this evening? I'll ask the second time if there's anyone here present who wishes to speak before the public hearing this evening. I'll ask a third and final time if there's anyone here present who wishes to speak before the public hearing. Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We'll move then to item number 4, which is the first of 2 in-camera sessions. So we do have 2 brief presentations that we do need to hear in closed. So once we do go into closed session, I'll have to ask all of you to leave except for the first delegation. So Nathan, I think you're up first. So I'll invite you to stay, and anyone that's a part of your delegations. And then Mohammed will come back to you as the second one. We'll come out and get you and bring you back in. And then once that's completed, we'll bring everybody else back in for the rest of the meeting. So I entertain a motion from someone to enter a closed session. From Councilor Boss, that's pursuant to section 19 of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act. All in favor? That is closed. Excellent. Let's go there.
Did not like my iPhone.
Probably cooler outside.
Yeah.
Definitely cooler outside.
Couldn't be warmer.
Yeah, so Shane texted me that the AC units are frozen up, but that is the hazard of having residential units in a commercial. So, yeah.
Frozen up already.
Normally it's float. Might need to take a look at it. So if they're sized and.
Oh, good.
Who
Who makes the motion to take this outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, saving the budget on AC around.
Exactly.
Don't complain about your taxes being too high. For you people. That's it.
All right, we move to item number 6. First delegation is the Stirling Lions Club, so I'm not sure who wishes to speak and present, but throw it over to you.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in? Sure. Yeah. Tag team, we'll leave it to you. You mind?
Yeah.
Everyone, I'm Jay Cox. I am with the Stirling District Lions Club, and we're tonight to talk about the kiosk restoration. I think the budget information that we prepared came out ahead of time. Yeah, sorry, the proposal wasn't ready for the presentation, so let's do the first sentence. Thank you. So the historic kiosk at the end of town has become a little bit deteriorated over the years. Needs a bit of maintenance work. The paint on the exteriors started to wear. Next slide again. Quite a bit in some areas, especially with western exposure. We're seeing quite a bit of wear on paint and rotted boards. Next again. As well as some of the exterior display panels. And fascia boards that are starting to curl and rot as well. Next. And one of the biggest areas of concern is the display plinths, where the substrate underneath the display materials has really started to deteriorate. And the panels themselves, a lot of them are unreadable, where they're just exposed to the elements 24/7. You can see again there, one more. So both the plinths are in similar shape. And then the display panels themselves, well, most are still readable. The photos have really started to weather. As best we can tell, the kiosk was built around 1999, it seems. So they are 25, 26 years old at this point, and they're certainly showing their age. All right. So I'm going to take a bit of a related tangent. One of the things we wanted to address coming before council was the value that we see in the kiosk to the village of Stirling and the value in preserving that part of our history here. In 1999, in March of 97, the National Historic Site Report was issued that addressed Stirling's recognition as a natural historic site and sort of what elements were important within the community in having that designation continue. So originally, the commemorative intent with Stirling becoming a historic site was the Stirling Agricultural Village is of national historic significance because it's the best surviving example of a Mormon agricultural village. This distinctive settlement pattern was introduced to southern Alberta by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who settled in this region during the Great Wheat Boom era from the late 1890s to 1914. So that's taken from that report. Thank you. There were a few different strategies that were laid out. There were two pieces of built infrastructure that were a critical part of the report and mentioned throughout. One being the Mickelson Farm and the other being the Visitor Orientation Center. The Visitor Orientation Center is located at the entry to town and will act as the primary focal point for the interpretation of the site. It will house a reception area to meet visitors and a series of display panels which will tell the story of Stirling and its role in settlement and development. Visitors also will be made aware of the town's facilities and ongoing events. During the Southern Months guided tours will be considered parking lot will serve as a starting point for these self-guided tours. The report that went out, I hadn't read it before putting this work together. I think it's amazing the amount of work that went into putting that together and the vision that it put forward for Stirling at the time and how it could develop in line with this National Historic Site designation. Thank you. So even though in the club we've been referring to it as the Stirling Historical Kiosk through the research, if you don't mind more, it's actually called the Stirling Agricultural Village National Historic Site Interpretive Center, which I think is quite meaningful, but it is not sort of just a kiosk. It is our interpretive center. It is meant to mark the history of this community and its recognition nationally. Other national historic sites in Alberta include the Barty Ranch, but across the country, it includes Penny's Cove, Citadel Hill. To be a member of that group really means something. We've got quite a significant designation here in the community. Thank you. One more piece, again, a little bit of a tangent, but in the value that we see in the kiosk in its current location, one more again, please. Stirling is really lucky in that we have a really well-defined civic square. And that does come back to the plan design on town planning that Stirling was laid out on. A central part of that town plan is a community square that is meant to be founded with the municipal building, the church, and the school. And so Stirling still has that in the community, which is really valuable around Main Street and one more. And with the park on the west end of town, we've got the campground and the pool, baseball diamonds. We got a great amenity for the community, one more. On the east end of town with the kiosks. These are both great nodes that mark each end of Main Street, and I think can be a key part of the village's goal in Main Street redevelopment. Again. So we've got this east-west corridor that can connect visitors who are coming into town from the interpretive center through Main Street and can help engage and activate that street to the campground and the pool and park. Yeah, there's already the smaller commercial area and more on Main Street, and we know the village has intent for another and one more again, and zoning again for another. And you can start to see a pattern along Main Street that if we can keep those two ends connected and welcome visitors through that area of the community, we can really help activate it where, again, one more, the potential may be there for further growth along Main Street in the future. That can be centered around that historic context rather than trying to be another Raymond or a smaller version of Lethbridge, but really sort of taking into account the historic significance that we have here. So as a group, we've met out at the kiosk a couple of times. Sorry to run away if you want to.
You're good.
Okay. We came up with a series of priorities. We're calling this phase one. That's the goal here, and that being to stabilize the site as it is now, and then improve the interpretive content to try to re-engage with that history. So we're replacing damaged and rotted channel siding, corner boards and fascias, the rotted substrate under the interpretive plinths, repainting the building exterior and interpretive displays, replacing the broken window panes, there's just a couple, recreating the damaged interpretive panels, reprinting them and mounting them. I've reached out to the architect who designed the kiosk. He retired since that project was done and unfortunately did not keep his archive. So any of the original drawings are gone, but there's enough information there that we can recreate them. Replace the exterior response lighting and ensure the lighting controls are working so that the lights are on in the evening. Adding under-soffit lighting just to improve visibility on the site, and adding a couple picnic tables to the site to encourage that community and visitor use. You'll see in the cost report that was sent out a more detailed breakdown, but the anticipated costs for phase one are about $25,900. In-kind contributions from the Stirling Club and members right now are about $7,800. So the remaining cost for what we're looking to do in this first phase is about $18,100 is the estimate. So presentation, if there's any questions.
Thank you, first of all, for putting that together. It's an awful lot of work, and so I very much appreciate you all taking the time to cut. Questions from the city?
Well, I don't have any questions. I think it's very clear, and as the mayor pointed out, it's very thorough. And I think you touched on some things that are very important to those of us who lived here and raised our families here and moved here because of what the village had to offer in terms of the Plat of Zion approach and the proximity of the things that were important to us, the pool, the school, to create a rhyme unintentionally. But nevertheless, that's kind of what Stirling is well known for. And I don't think that we've done an adequate job to this point of leveraging that the way that it can be. I think our vision has been over the years moved away from that aspect of the village to where we are today, which is not, I wouldn't say rudderless, but I'm not sure that everyone is rowing in the same direction. So I think this could help us come back as a community to identify our core values and the things that made many of us move here in the first place and have kept us here. And that is representative. This kiosk, this interpretive center represents all of what I just tried to stumble through.
Of course. I'm curious whether or not the club has considered alternative locations for the kind of content, perhaps in different form. The reason I ask is the long-term viability of that site will depend on the development around it. And so at some point, I would hate to see an investment in this infrastructure for it to have to be torn down. So has there been any discussion about alternative options or other locations?
Okay, speak to that.
I don't think we've talked about alternative locations. We've talked about what is the master plan. And let's figure out a way to incorporate the vision of growth. But let's utilize maybe a piece of that, but why interrupt the focal point of coming to town? What's interesting, my observation is a lot of us, 4 of us, 5 of us, 6 of us are immigrants to town. And all of us, funny or not, have recognized that kiosk as an entrance to Stirling. You see that, like, oh, that's a cute little craftsman house. It's inviting. But I think for the average Stirling individual who grew up here, who watched that thing get built, sometimes I wonder if it's appreciated in the same fashion. So I agree, like, I see the vision of where we're going, what your ideas are. But
One of the things included in the report is that Stirling is to have a heritage advisory council as a part of being a national historic site that works both with the province and the federal government in how that designation is maintained. I don't know when or if that council has ever sort of been put together, but that would certainly be our hope, is that if of course Stirling is looking to grow and develop, that it's in the context of that historical designation.
Yeah, and we do have a municipal development plan that holds
Yeah.
that near and dear to our hearts as
Yeah.
a key overriding principle for any future development. So that's absolutely embedded in the bylaws, right?
Yeah, I appreciate the work that's been done, because we've had discussions about that building. We've had discussions about some of the things that you're saying we should be doing and just have.
Or should have been.
Or should have completed over the years, and it just hasn't been done. So I believe at some point recently, we had the discussion of, let's figure out what it costs to get it to the point where it's functional and useful in the way that it was originally designed. And thanks to you guys, you've done all the work. So now that we know the answer to that, right? So it's easier for us to make the decision as to how we move forward with these things when we know the financial impact. Being a small community, money is not grown on trees necessarily. And the idea of fixing something up and maintaining it, or maintaining something rather than tearing it down and building it somewhere else, like it just doesn't make sense to me. So for me personally, fixing this up makes sense. Investing the dollars, it makes sense. Long-term, where the growth is, who knows? But I think the anchor, like you're saying, you come to the community, you see this, Christmas at the kiosk, there's been some events recently,
National Historic Site Interpretive Center.
Yeah. It's underutilized asset for sure. I think it just sort of, over the years has become like the mountain view that you have. Sometimes you're driving towards a mountain and you go, wow, that's great. But most of the time you just go, that's the scenery. And you keep on with your track. I think that's fit into this category where we just sort of drive past it. Most of us don't think about it. But
There's something about it. I don't know if it's the history or the building but like I've watched it even as we've gone out there physically, to meet and look at the site. Something, you start looking at those things, you read them, and then something happens where it's become more precious as a result of that, and then it's obviously, there's other community members who are trying to go out and plant flowers out there. I think one of the questions we have as a club is we want to partner our club's efforts and finances and muscle with whoever is directing and in charge of this. And that was one of the questions is what does that relationship look like? Because I think we've discussed, taking half that amount and as soon as there's permission, pulling the trigger on some of the structural stuff and the paint, do you know what I mean? And $10,000 in, it could have a fresh coat of paint, new panels, and then be the kind of thing that I like to, and narrow that idea of focal point for some of the historical tours and stuff. We'd have that very comment, like what does it look like for the Lions Club the whole night, where you come down on your bike, you grab a hot dog, and then we take that little route. And part of what I found tonight is, even your presentation reminds us of things that either I didn't know or, what I mean? Like, watch out, we'll put you on a tour. Give you this. But like, literally. And then there's the last point. The same way that you start driving a car, you see it everywhere. In the last couple weeks, I've noticed, every community has one of these. Like I drove through Claire's home today, and then I noticed theirs, and this isn't being critical of Stirling. If anything, it's that like as a club, and everybody kind of let the ball drop a bit, like you said, because when I drove past the Claire's home one, flowers, trees, maintained, there it is on their main street. I can't even imagine coming up on that way in Raymond and having bricks loose, weather. I mean, like it is kind of like, it left me feeling like, oh man, we got to do something about this. I mean, even if it were to be torn down next year, it's worth painting and preserving that thing. And I think what'll happen is you get people through that building this summer as you cut a ribbon on a fresh thing, and there will be a renewed interest in the history of this town.
Bring back Christmas there next year, like really start to bring it back into part of that community fabric, part of it.
But so anyway, those are questions. Well, one is, maybe it's a big mystery, is what is your plan with it? And then number two is who makes decisions, and who do we work with? Who gives the thumbs up for, go ahead, paint it this weekend? Who gives the thumbs up to, let's plant some flowers? And I know there's a cost associated with that, so that would have to be another discussion, but. Very good one.
Yes, let me tell you that it isn't about the money. $18,000 is cheap, given what you're going to put into, as well as the vision and all the effort that you put into this stuff. It isn't about the $18,000. It's about the shared vision. And it's because of the lack of vision that three of the mayors that are currently sitting at this table, former mayors, so that we didn't, and I'm the oldest, and Larry, you came a little later, but nevertheless, we didn't have the vision. Mind you, back then it was still in pretty good shape. So the deterioration has happened, and as it always, you'd always expect it to. But I think that the club's challenge and our challenge for those of you who see things the way that you just described them is catch the vision of what the potential is to restore this to its sort of original form and make it even more attractive with the other things you mentioned, flowers and picnic tables and things. It's going to be convincing 5 people around this table that that's the vision we should be going for, that this facility will play a key role in the future development of Stirling to continue to be the kind of village where you want to move to and live and raise a family. Does this play a role to do that? And is $18,000 not, in fact, worth it to be able to do that? Now, some people have other visions for that corner and that location and what it could be. Service station, convenience store. Really, what the hell does that tell me? What's Stirling? Just a place to drive through and get some gas or an ice cream or soda while you're going somewhere else. There's nothing to say, hey, well, what is there? See what I'm saying? So it's that shared vision. We really gotta get that.
So that's kind of a loaded deal, right? Because like the shared vision would include what potentially are the plans there. That may shift our thinking. So I guess the question is,
How shared is
how shared is the vision and how quick could that shared vision be encountered? Because our intention is it's spring, let's do this.
And could those visions work together? Is there a way for those different goals to be actually?
Could the site coexist
Yeah.
with whatever the future development plans are, right? Whether that be, I'm certain you don't want a lot of turnoffs going off the highway there, right? You've already got enough entry points, but could that work with the residential? Is there enough? There's laneway access, there's all sorts of different options there. So
What are the two lots zoned now?
next residential.
So any final questions from this side first?
I just had one comment, I guess, when you said the name interpretive center.
Yeah.
My mind went to something like, as mentioned, Buffalo Jump, which is a little more in-depth than a few pictures on the wall kind of thing. Would there be any appetite to adding to what's there, maybe through the historical site group? My mind kind of goes to digitizing the Stirling Speaks stuff. Maybe you direct people to the library where there's a station set up where you can hear some of the history of the town, or even maybe at some point you expand some sort of an additional historical where there's more maybe multimedia type information versus just pictures.
And I think those are areas where we'd love to see it go in future phases even. So going back to the report that was written in 97, the interpretive center was actually meant to be an enclosed heated building. And it recognizes the report that budget's always going to factor into that. It was meant to have a bookstore to sell materials related to the village and the historic site designation and a small craft market in it as well. And I'm sure with the centennial coming up in 1999, there wasn't time to put the money into it that would have been necessary for that vision. But I think the potential is absolutely still there for in future phases to develop the site into something more.
Well, and a lot of that happens at the Nicholson Farmstead.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot bigger area where a lot more can happen.
And it's meant to
And
direct people
that's
into
where-
those other
yeah.
resources.
And
Absolutely.
that's there to whet the appetite, and then
Yeah.
hopefully people go to the Nicholson Farmstead.
Yeah.
To see what it was like back then and to have more of these things happen.
But if you don't have that entry point to town, nobody's gonna know Nicholson Farmstead. Nobody, they'll just keep driving.
There's
It's not gonna, so my daughter worked at Nicholson for the past couple of summers. You could station that person
Yeah, sure.
up front, share it and just say, hey, there's this, talking about multimedia. We have all these great, Ron Bohr's house, right? I stopped and read the plaque. When I first moved here, I went around, why can't you have something that, turn your radio station to whatever. Yeah.
It's your talking about. And I think that's exactly right. And that is in the historical report. There's two things that were key elements there. Two must-haves. One was the Mickelson Farmstead, and the other one was that there would be an interpretive center at the end of the village. Those are two sort of firm commitments. Reading through the report and some of the other things that have been laid at the time, I do wonder if we are at risk of losing our historic site designation at some point if we don't continue through and even pick back up some of the requirements that are in it and we're in place at the current time.
Thank you again for the presentation and for your time. We appreciate it. Very quickly.
But I think of the kiosk versus a gas station and a store. We already have a gas station and a store in this little town, but mean, that competition, like, to me, that's just not even possible. And I know I've talked with Connie before, who owns that land, and we've talked about building a residence for people, you know, on the floor, so that people.
People like me and you, you mean?
There. Okay, and we talk about things like that, and I just think that, but you have to look at the value of what that does to the town versus seeing a gas station. There used to be a gas station there on that corner, but it wasn't the only gas station in town, okay?
Thank you.
Is there a way to find out? And then when we can have an answer, whether we can.
Well, I guess we'll have a discussion later this evening, and then from there, there'll be a decision that, get you guys together with Scott, or what's the next steps?
So I think that's our next question. It's
Yeah.
just, will you let us paint?
Understood.
So you're talking financial help with this too?
Not with that part. I think we can.
We've talked about a partnership with the village, ourselves, the historical society, maybe even the seniors, like I might be speaking as far as I know, but interested parties.
Yeah.
That will,
The focus is the $18,000. The in-kind is us.
Right, we know that.
So the $18,000, what that shared cost could be, whether it's the line, historical,
So the Lions could be part of that too.
100%.
And we're just start. Yeah, we can start.
But you don't want to do anything unless you know we're not going to tear it down.
Right.
And to have your
I
permission.
think we have to paint that regardless of what you do, because it's such a, it's so bad right now. I literally am thinking because I do in the summer anyway, like there's been a few times where I thought, I'll just do this overnight.
It would be nice to have some in place for Saturdays, that's what we've discussed.
It's gonna be a cool.
Thank you again for the conversation. And our next delegation, the illustrious Deborah Reed Bickler, the Vice President of Villages for Alberta Municipalities, has graced us with your presence.
No, actually, I've got notes on this. Yeah, really nice chat. There are two grants out there, federal and provincial, right into this. So,
that's been a little full.
Just stated it, Brent.
if you're gonna continue with this as you wanna do more with it,
Sandra,
like
it's a really
do,
good grant.
I'm reading, as you were asking about it, I'm reading through, I pulled them up on my webpage and I'm reading the criteria. So there's grants out there for this historical, being able to convey that message to your community, to visitors. Very timely, I think some are up. The federal one's open right now, there's a provincial one that opens at the beginning of next year. So $25,000-$30,000, but that can get you a long way if you want to do QR coding.
We've applied for that many times, and it used to be $25,000 to $30,000. Now you're lucky if you get $3,000.
Yeah, it's,
Out of that provincial.
yeah, but it's, it's worth putting it out there, especially you've got all the background research now. And when they're doing these grants, they love to see that whole presentation that was just put forward.
Well, the Mickelson is a designated provincial historic resource, and we get maybe $2,000 or $3,000. Maybe.
So go hassle them a bit more.
Because it used to be, like when I was the mayor way back when, every 3 years you get about $35,000.
Yeah.
And
I think you have to be a bit more engaged with your MLAs and the minister in charge of that, who's absolutely impossible to get hold of. I'm willing to try on your behalf.
Thank you for joining us and for your patience. We'll turn the time over to you.
Yes, I won't take up too much of your time because I know we've got a huge council meeting tonight. These member visits, so His Worship very kindly introduced me. That's who I am. I have a passion for villages, even though obviously from my accent, I'm new to this country. I live in rural Alberta. I live in a village that's 1,058, and this is my passion. It is actually kind of your mayor's fault that I'm doing this role. So if you want to have a go at anyone who's sort of It was himself and a couple of others in this region that pushed me into stepping forward. Actually, I want to thank you.
Thank
because
you.
I haven't enjoyed my work this much in probably 25 years. I absolutely love it. It's probably a full-time job. It's not supposed to be, but if you do it well, it's a full-time job. And while I've still got energy in the tank, I will continue to do it. I plan to run again this fall, and I'm happy for anyone to run against me. That's democracy, but I will be running, and I do hope to continue the honor of representing you. So really, just a quick thing about this. You get information from us all the time. You get emails, and I apologize, we're trying to get them to cut that down. Emails, webinars, information sessions, but we don't hear from you as much. And so part of these member engagements is to actually get out to the community. This is my face, this is who I am. You have a rep. I'm contactable about anything, even if it's something I can't help you with, I will find the person that can, and I will make that connection for you. And so really just to hear from you as well about the challenges you've got, sort of key challenges, because when I'm meeting with ministers, when I'm meeting at the board table, when we're making decisions on advocacy and how we're going to approach situations, when I have the real I can sit there and say, well, all villages struggle with infrastructure. If I can sit there and I can say, look, Stirling needs this, Coots needs this, Walnut, that means something, and I can tell you, it really means something to the ministers. I actually have ministers repeating stories I've given them. Minister Nixon has 2 of my stories now, but he uses, because I've heard him use them. The Premier, who is my MLA, and she hasn't fallen out with me yet, even though I contact her a lot. She loves stories too, tangible evidence. So when I do these visits and I hear from you, don't think that just disappears into a report in a folder on that's material I use when I'm out in the province, when I get a chance, when I earmark the Minister of Municipal Affairs in the bar, which happened at the RMA conference. Pin him in the corner and ply him with a shot. And I'm not quite sure what Minister Williams' approach to hanging out in the bar is, but I guess we'll find out. So really, it's just, if I can very quickly, again, cognizant of your time, hear from you, but also I've left my card. People know how to reach me. I'm in touch with Scott. I will tell you your resolution on seniors affordable housing. Colhurst is your seconder. Scott called me on my drive over here to say their meeting last night got kiboshed by their public hearing, which rather went on a long time. And so they postponed to council to next week, but he has 100% commitment from 3 of his 5 councillors, so it will pass. So that will go forward. I've been working with your CAO. It's already been approved by the unis, so we're just waiting for that second motion, and that will go in, which is fantastic news.
Awesome.
So just open it up quickly. If there's anything in particular you want to highlight, that would be great.
I have 3 for you.
3, and you would.
So one is the seniors housing funding model, which thank you for your support on getting that resolution to the debate floor in the fall.
Yeah.
It won't be me there, but someone who's new around this table will be there to sponsor the motion. We'll make sure of that. So appreciate your help doing that. Second would be the police funding model fiasco, which Alberta municipalities candidly created for itself a little bit by going down that road in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think 2 things for us. There has to be credit for the investment we make in bylaw enforcement.
Yeah.
Right, because we're part of the Ridge Regional Public Safety Services Commission, for which we get 0 credit.
Right.
In that model. Whereas other communities that invest in other things like that, it's rebated back to them. And so the other challenge that we've heard directly from our detachment commander, as well as the minister, -2 ago, was that because crime severity index in this region is negligible, we will never see boots on the ground for that incremental investment. And we get the fact that resources have to go to the places where they're most needed. But if we're contributing to the pot, there ought to be some measurable benefit to us, right? We have 6 members in our detachment. We've always had 6 members. We will only ever have 6 members.
Right.
And next year, our costs are gonna be north of $100,000 to contribute to that pot, which doesn't make a lot of sense to us.
Yeah.
To me.
To add to that, typically they're understaffed. So you might have 6 members, but typically they're running with 4 or 5.
Yes.
Right? So it's not that we're even contributing and now we're fully staffed.
Yeah.
Because we have Brock. And just the meeting that we had with him, he says, yeah, that's as good as we're gonna get. Like we probably will never be fully staffed, but that's what we're used to.
But you're right, there is a conversation that needs to take place.
And then the third would be something you've heard many, many times before around LGFF,
Yeah.
ETG and all of those. What's predictable, what's sustainable? And again, I come back to fiscal capacity. So that was our main lobby point 2 or 3 years ago, which thankfully the minister put into the model.
Yeah.
We did a lot of work to sort of talk about the fact that we don't have the same capacity as, a town our size next door that has 70% residential instead of 98.
Yes.
Right, and so that, like, our capacity is capped, it always will be.
Yeah.
Because that's not gonna change overnight. So the calculation needs to reflect that in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And it's not, bless Harmony's dear hearts, it's not number of page kilometers of road.
Yes.
Right, and so again, I know you guys are working on that with them and
Yeah.
presenting 2 different models, but I think long-term, local government fiscal framework is the abbreviation, which is our primary source of funding. So again, I don't think that's news to you, but for Stirling specifically, and I'm sure just your community.
Yes, absolutely.
The model doesn't account for the specific constraints we have, and I don't think that's just the villages thing, but it's also like they look at assessed value, but not where it comes from.
Yes.
So it's great that you've got equalized assessment, awesome. What's the calculation behind that? Needs to
Yeah.
know.
And you've actually touched on a really good point, and I dragged Councillor Bressy down to Barron's last week. And he walked away from there and phoned his mayor and said, we're changing that resolution we're putting forward, because I've just had my eyes opened. So, thank you. It's taken me 3 trips, dragging him around to smaller communities, but this is the piece that it's so hard, but it's so key, is that capacity. So I have a village further up north, Bicycle, literally has no land. They're about 97% residential. They have 0 land. They have 0 ability to take over land because it's farm owned around them. So they're in a situation where they cannot increase. They have no capacity, like 0 capacity. And so it's getting that message across, and it is a key message. And we're kind of refining. I had a conversation with our new CEO the other day, probably 8 o'clock in the morning. And we ended up talking for an hour about exactly this. How do we get that message nuanced to get that piece in so that they understand that there has to be tweaks to the model to reflect those nuances of capacity and that residential. And I noticed recently too, we've been going back to this, how much tax you're paying. Which is not relevant. We have to get the story back to the mill rates, because my house is not worth what Councillor Bressy's is in Grand Prairie. It's the same sort of size. It's worth about 180,000. So yes, I'm going to pay less tax, relatively speaking, but my mill rate is about 30% higher than his. So that's the capacity piece. So yeah, we're on the same page. If you have any additional information, details specific to Stirling, absolutely please share them with me. Because, if I have those, just a few lines of facts, this is the impact, I can use those, and I do use them. So, yeah, apparently I'm well known in all of them too.
Any other comment or feedback from the table for what you like out there in this house? Anything else you want to tell us?
No, not really, just reminding you, just to say, and I know that there's people considering retirement, if you are not running this fall, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the years of service. because it is, we know that being a councillor in a small community it's not a paid job. It's a thankless task and it's a volunteer position. You know, the little bit of money we do get, I call it expense money. It's not paid. We've got to change the narrative around that. We don't get paid. If you are running again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because without people like you in your community stepping forward, villages will not, they will continue. And I've got a community right now that are so, their council's so frustrated with the abuse they've been taking from the small community that they are not running. And they're trying to get that message out to their residents. If nobody runs, guess what happens? The minister gets the keys. And you think you've got it bad now? That is not a pleasant experience. So just thank you, because I know it's not always easy, and I know, you know, people are not respectful anymore. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you've done and all you do. And I wish you good luck. And if you are continuing come to convention, please come and find me. They run us really hard at convention, but so we're all, and if we're not in the right place at the right time, the staff have meltdowns. So please come and find me and say hi and tell me what's going on. And if you are continuing to run it again, consider running for one of our committees or challenge me for the board, that's fine. But especially if you've got 4 times a year, if you can make it, I'm really desperately short of committee reps from this region. And I understand it's a long drive. It's going to take you 2.5 days a year to get there and back for a 1-day meeting. I will say that they now compensate you for a full day of travel. Doesn't offset all of it, but at least it gives you something back. So, and really, if I'm lucky enough to be re-elected and I see those names on the board, I will be making sure that they get into those committees, because we need your voices up at that table. It's really important when those policies are being analysed. So that's what I've got, and I won't take any more of your valuable time. There's some cards floating around. Your CAO and your mayor know how to get hold of me. At any time, if there's something you want to pass on, or when I've driven away for 10 minutes, you go down, we should pass that. Please share it with me, because that's what I'm here for.
Thank you for including us on your round this week.
I really appreciate the visit, and enjoy the rest of your council meeting. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to your presentation. Enjoyed it.
There's a couple for the road.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we're going. It's been a long day. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
We'll move back to item number 5, which is recognition. I did put one in there for the U18 soccer. They came away with gold. They had an undefeated season, so I thought that was pretty slick.
Better yes, they beat Raymond in the final.
And more important.
That's right.
Again.
Any others?
I added one,
Oh,
just recognizing Mayor Lewington for his recent recognition.
thank you. Got my buffalo today.
When you post on Facebook.
We're all there.
Thank you for that.
It's awesome.
That moves us to item number 7, which is the minutes from the June 4th meeting. Were there any edits, changes, modifications, additions, substitutions, or subtractions from those?
Can you say that again? Sure. I have no, not moved.
All in favor? That is carried. Any business arising not otherwise already on the agenda?
Always next.
No, I'm good.
Okay, motion tracker, anything you wanted to speak to at all, Scott, or just it looks like same? Okay. The check listing is in the system in front of you, so it's check 064069, and then EFTs 769 to 784. Were there any questions with respect to any of the accounts payable? Despite the grunt from Deputy Mayor Nilsson.
Actually, it looks really good this time.
I'll move. Accounts payable.
With that, motion on the table from Councillor Foss, all in favor? Motion is carried. There's a bank reconciliation for May of 2025. Any questions about the bank rec?
I will just say the same thing I have been saying for a long time. make it better.
In terms of the number you mean?
Well, no, just
More detail.
more detail. The way that they used to have it was
With the
really
bank
good.
balances.
Yes, and you saw how much went in the month, and you saw how much went out in the month. This doesn't tell you anything, it just tells you what we've got.
Any progress, Scott, on finding page 2? I know you were working with our friends in Raymond as well as, dare I say this, Uniware.
So Muniware cannot do page 2 anymore. They removed that from the application. So if we were to do a page 2, we have to get
So I
Raymond
think I
to
hear a request
request
to
out
do
a
exactly
spreadsheet
that
separately
from Deputy
and
Mayor
then
Nielsen
produce it in that
to show the different
respect when
bank
it comes to
balances
the bank rec.
and come up with a zero-sum report to go with the bank rec.
Wonderful.
Thank you for that. Any other questions about
Yeah,
the bank
I
rec?
will communicate that to Kim and see what she can come up with for us.
Entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Deputy Mayor Nielsen, all in favor? Carried. That moves us to items for discussion. 9.1.1 is second reading. So bylaw 556-25, land use bylaw amendment is back. As you heard, there was nothing that came forward in the required public hearing. So it is before you for consideration for second reading.
I'll move second.
With that motion on the table from Councillor Foss, is there any other debate or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? The motion is carried. Bylaw 556-25 is hereby read a second time.
I'd like to.
I'm sure you might. With that motion on the table from Councillor Davis, is there any other debate or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion is carried. Bylaw 556-25, the land use bylaw amendment is hereby read a third and final time. That brings us to municipal reserve policy DV 07-25. Scott, anything you want to speak to there?
So in doing this particular subdivision materials with Bonnie, she was asking me in relation to what the village has for subdivision schedule. And we were able to ascertain that it was a schedule in a former Raymond policy from the time when Raymond was sharing CAO services with the village of Stirling. So that being said, I've put together an MR policy for council's consideration,
So I did
utilizing the
the
original
system
that were in that schedule and that have historically been utilized for us when we're claiming cash
Yeah, so I
money
was just
for
gonna say,
MR.
like, the schedule is based on 2007 data. Is there value in doing
I did-
something different, or is
Virtually.
there no real structure for that?
Yeah. Well, we can take 10% and then, so the way the act is worded is we can either take 10% of what the actual value of the land is, unless the developer and the municipality agree to a fee schedule. So I think there was some deliberate intention in how the fee schedule is set up. It might be worth the exercise in looking at what those values are if we were to take 10% of the value and make sure the fee schedule is in relative alignment to that. So I think it's just been a default from ORSC in the past to just utilize what the schedule was. We haven't done a whole lot of them. That's why it's just kind of been flagged now. So it could be worth the
But this at
exercise of
least gives you
seeing
a
what the value of the
baseline
land is and what
fee
10%
schedule,
would
you're covered by the
actually
act, and then you can
equate
always
to
negotiate
financially,
something separate.
and then set a fee schedule accordingly if it's out of alignment.
That was my question. Are there other questions?
I think that's good.
Just one
Absolutely.
grammar mistake, the last page, number 1. Any MR land or cash in lieu collected, which is to be shared with the any school division. I think either leave the out or leave any out, would be okay. Not both.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
If we're being picky, joint use planning agreement should be with. We've got the title and then the point.
So I hear 2 friendly amendments. Scott, do you have both of those? I
think you did a great job, Scott.
Yeah, Aled, if you can grab those for me and then we'll just amend it.
So if there's a desire, we can
If passed.
approve that as amended.
All of that,
With that motion on the table from Councilor Bickman, all in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to an update to the seniors housing resolution. Scott, do you want to speak to the slight tweaks?
So the tweets in there, I had a comprehensive meeting with Rachel and Deb, as well as Scott Ackermans with the town of Colehurst, who's our seconder. And unfortunately, Rachel DeVos with Alberta Municipalities was not able to she was on vacation in essence, but she had sat down with their seniors housing representative and they wanted to change the language up to some degree to broaden the ability of the government to make changes to give us money and not worry about the ownership of the land component, so to speak. So since they're looking to get out of the ownership of facilities, they wanted to make it a little broader so that Alberta Municipalities has more tools and leverage in the toolbox to try and get a better deal for us as smaller urbans. They also were concerned that with the language being the way that it was, some of the medium and larger sized urbans would be opposed to the resolution because it has no real benefit to them. So making it a little more nebulous as to the size of municipality, they felt would lean better on the membership to have a better opportunity for it to pass when it goes to committee at Alberta Municipalities after the election. So that being said, given that we had passed a motion in relation to the original resolution proposal, Rachel stated that we would be for council to pass a motion to allow myself as administrator to engage with Alberta Municipalities to ratify the proposed resolution so that it has a better probability of success, one, at Alberta Municipalities, and two, in being able to actually enact some change within government. So before council was what we crafted for a motion in relation to that. And as part of it, I put what all the changes for the resolution were back to you so that you can see what was actually tweaked and updated. So in the meeting, she had a working document that we kind of worked through the language between the four of us. And this was what we came up with that would probably have the highest probability for passing and then give Alberta Municipalities
like in the
good tools in the toolbox to be able to go forward and get us the result we're
that's
looking
where
for.
it basically talks about changing the model for communities of all sizes so we don't antagonize larger communities to oppose us.
Pretty much, yeah. Rachel's concern was that the larger municipalities already have self-sustaining programs and they have a large amount of votes, and many of the medium-sized municipalities are also in a similar boat. So if the government's carving up more money for us, it doesn't benefit them. So creating a little bit more nebulous aspect to that, and then not being so finite in our approach as to what our ask is, but our ask is to address the funding model so that we get more money for seniors housing.
Yeah, I'll just repeat what I said previously. Sometimes you make a resolution and you end up with a police funding model that hurts everybody as a specific example. And so you don't want to end up with creating a resolution that if the funding model doesn't benefit the people who we're trying to benefit, it actually can potentially hurt us, right? So we're looking for small communities. We want support for small communities. If we whitewash it too much, then they can pat themselves on the back and say, hey, we've got more funding for senior housing, but we end up with a smaller piece of the pie. And so I just caution us on making sure that we're not too nebulous, I think is the word that you use, to try to gain support. Resolution AUMA requires 50 plus one vote. So it's not like you need overwhelming support, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. So I think there's more smaller communities than there are larger communities. Whether they show up to AUMA or not is part of the question. So I just caution us on making sure that we're not creating some negotiation tactic that actually harms us or potentially could harm us in the end, even though the intent is to make it better.
I think that's a very good point. I think you explained it well.
Go ahead, Scott.
I think we should be okay, because it does directly affect the affordable housing program, which is geared for the smaller municipalities. So I think we'll be okay in that, in the resolution. And with Deborah being on the call as well, being the Village of Dutchess, they have a real large driving factor behind this, and she's kind of the member of Alberta municipalities who's going to be representing, sitting at the table for these. So I think in that respect, we're covered. I mean, could it go rogue? There's the entire possibility, but I think ideally, they seem to understand the intent, and there seems to be more people than just us in Colehurst that are in this position that are going to be driving this ship with Alberta municipalities to get it for us smaller urbans. The need is there. So I think we're okay. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I think we're okay. And I think the information that Rachel was giving us to try and craft the resolution,
I think it will, and that's
the way that it was,
as long as we
was
make sure
done in
that
such a fashion that
we
it's
voice our
hopefully going to get us the best
concern to make
possible
sure that
outcome.
this is really geared towards small communities, even though we want to get the support.
And my question, going along with that is, will it be as effective if it isn't Rachel speaking there? Like if somebody else takes her place, will they have as clear a vision with this document as we have, and as it was a little narrowly focused, but nevertheless focused on what we care about? And so that's a question to you, Scott.
I would say that yes, it will, because it's more than just Rachel sitting at the table. They've got a seniors housing advocacy group, and the leading person in seniors housing isn't actually Rachel, it's one of her staffers. And the new CEO actually had a portfolio in housing when he would work for the Alberta government. So he weighed in on this as well. And with him being the new CEO, I think there'll be some longevity there with him. I mean, the last gentleman was there, I believe, for 20 some odd years. So I'm kind of hoping he's in the same boat. So I think we'll have some continuity and consistency. And as long as the elected officials that form that committee are there for the next 4 years,
Any other questions?
that advocacy is going to be moving in that direction, and we'll probably see it through at least until the next provincial election for sure.
Tomorrow with Grant Hunter. So,
With Rich Country Housing, right?
yes, so I was planning on giving him a copy of this. And then
Yeah, it would be good to get his feedback.
what else did we discuss that we need to discuss with him? Other than
So it was the readiness stuff. So we were talking about how we would do,
about the needs assessment?
the needs, like that's in progress.
In the
We're gonna
context
get
of seniors
land,
housing?
But we want to get his feedback on what's the political appetite, and, understanding the 1/3, 1/3, I think was the biggest conversation piece, right?
Okay.
And it's sort of showing him that we're doing our part to get land ready. We'll do phase 1 environmental and geotechnical if we have to. We've got Rich Country Housing putting some stuff together. We've got FCSS doing the needs assessment. Like,
Yes.
I think it's demonstrate we're doing our part, and you're going to need his help to
Push it forward.
And I think, if I remember right, Scott, you can chime in too, but when we sat here with Peggy and David Davidson and Bruce.
Yes.
Jeff, right?
Yeah.
It was around also helping them understand that we have zero. We're the only community in the system that has zero. Right? Like, how does Coots have more than more than us? Right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, and so, respect to Brent, I think that's part of just educating him on that, where we're at. Right?
Good.
That makes sense?
Yes.
But yeah, getting his feedback on this, I think will be, at least he knows it's coming and can chime in. Right?
Yes. It helps support.
Yeah.
For us.
So you have some kind of motion?
So there is a proposed motion, yes, to approve to amend the previously approved resolution and provide Scott with some direction to work with Alberta municipalities to get that on the table.
I'll make that motion.
as our seniors housing guy. Motion on the table. Any other debate or discussion? All in favor? That's carried as well. Thank you for that. That brings us to item 9.4, which is a revised capital plan.
So before council is a revised capital plan. It's detailing the changes in relation. Now, everything there was already approved, but it's just detailing the changes with the removal of the water program. So with us not doing all the capital improvements for the water system until the spring, based off the timing of the RFP and when we start to see costs coming out, that does change what the capital budget will look like for 2025. So those are the amended numbers, and you will see, based around some of the actual costs that we've realized so far, some things have adjusted, but we have seen about a $40,000 savings in what was originally listed for transferring from the fleet reserve. So we are actually in a better shape with the capital budget.
So there are no
as
new
of today.
numbers to approve.
And
This
with
is
those
for
changes, we'll
information
just be
and there's
adjusting
simply
what the
bucket
2026
shifting
capital plan
from-
looks like,
based on
having the
new
water
timing of the
project being
project
added in there.
2026. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's correct. Complete bucket shifting, nothing new
Since we're
approved.
talking capital,
Only one item retracted as
recently
was discussed previously.
sent out, like fires, capital improvements, which may or may not include getting that trailer up and running. Is there a way that we can, I don't know what the number is, I don't know how close we are, I know we're still a ways off, but in the combination of additional revenue and maybe pulling some now financial flexibility to get that up and running, because we are still not even in fire season yet, but if we could get that ready, it might be beneficial.
Scott, do you know what their rough number is to complete the spoop?
So that preface that it depends. They asked for a sprinkler from an irrigation company, and if they get that, they should be ballpark about $20,000. So as soon as they hear whether they're successful in getting the hardware, will be about $20,000, and they purchase the 2 ponds and they're ready to roll. Talking with the chief, he is making a fully costed list as to what that could look like, and I can't tell council. With the deployment, we did make ballparkish about $20,000 off of the deployment of the brush truck alone.
Yeah.
So we
I think
could,
that
if they get the
costs-
information, theoretically
Yeah.
take those funds
And
and
if
allocate
there's-
them into the
if there's
ponds,
a gap,
and then we'd have a deployable
I still
spoon.
think it makes sense. You know, I think it's very clear in the 2 deployments that we've done in the last couple of years, there's a financial benefit there. If we have another piece of equipment that is going to then increase, it just, 1, we're providing a service, which is great, that's helpful. 2, there's some benefit for us financially as well. There's a good business case for that.
And it makes us more attractive to those that are looking for that help,
Right.
because we can provide it.
Yeah, another asset, certainly.
Sorry.
I do. I do have Chief Berkey at the council meeting in July, and he'll hopefully have the fully costed portfolio at that point in time.
So I think,
So
yeah, we could
depending
put
on where
a
you
couple of
want
arms
to go
over
with it,
there
I
to get a
can't
fully
imagine it's
costed
much
model,
above the
what
$40,000 mark
in
with
kind,
the
what's
sprinklers
not,
and
what's
such,
confirmed.
but I can't say for
And
sure.
at the same time, bring us a reconciliation of what that deployment actually generated. I think that's an important conversation for us to have.
The other part of it is, can we put it in order for one of those pools you called it? Ponds?
Yeah, I'll have that on in the July meeting for sure.
So if we order it is it gonna show up in September, or if we order it now, is it gonna show up in, July? Because I think that also makes a difference for me personally.
Yeah, because if you can deploy during fire season and generate revenue this year, that makes a difference.
Yeah, it's not helpful to have it in the middle of October and November and December, but it is in the middle of July. If that makes sense.
Go ahead, Scott, you got cut off there.
Yeah, I can definitely.
Do you want to provide some direction now in lieu of the fact that we don't meet for another month?
Oh, sorry, I said I can definitely
As long
ask
as it's
Chief
cost
Burkett those
neutral or-
questions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the direction would be to direct administration to the correct wording, utilize revenue from the Swan Hills deployment to acquire material for the
Completion is.
and provide costing material if there's a gap. That's bad words. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Got that.
But to me, I think if we're getting $25,000,
So, just so I-
that money should go
You want me
directly
to bridge
towards
the difference if
making
they don't
that
get the sprinkler
$25,000
donation and get it
closer
rolling
to
right away if we can?
rolling down the road and putting fires out. If there's another $20,000 that's needed, I think we have that conversation in July or whenever that is, but
Whatever unplanned revenue you have is the unplanned expense you can incur.
correct. It's a wash. Revenue in, expense out is what I'm directing you to do. But knowing full well that if there's a gap, I'm happy to support us spending more money to make sure that it's ready for this fire season.
That makes sense, Scott? But you're moving that, I presume?
Yeah.
So that is the first motion to deal with,
Okay.
is providing direction to administration to
Perfect.
utilize
Yep,
unplanned
100%.
revenue against unexpected expense to, and try to accelerate the rating of the structure protection unit.
Sounds way better.
With that motion on the floor, any other debate or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. The second motion then is to accept the revised capital plans information unless there's other questions.
I'll move it.
From Councillor Davis, all in favor? It's likewise carried. All right. That brings us to item 9.5, which is community costing. And so Scott, I'll let you talk to that. Looks like there was a fair bit of work done here.
Yeah, so I started comparing I wanted to kind of get an idea of where communities washed out for what it costs an average resident to live for a year, ballparkish. Now, I used a couple of metrics as averages. So I took a home worth a value of approximately $360,000. I used 32 cubes of water consumption per month based off of an annualized average of a individual dwelling in the village of Stirling. So we usually see peak consumption for the months over summer, reduced consumption over winter. So I just averaged that to 32 cubes. And then we're looking at certain things like franchise fees. I took an average household expenditure of $1,000 per month for electricity and $1,000 per month for natural gas. Now, interestingly, municipalities have been in the process of adjusting mill rates, some up, some down. But what people when they see their tax bill, they see their tax bill. What they don't see is the incremental increases in fees that coincide. The reason I included franchise fees is, as council's reiterated many times, it's kind of a form of sneaky taxation, because there's revenue that's collected by the utility company and then transferred to us based off of people's utility bills. So it's no different than us collecting school tax for Alberta education and the government of Alberta. So when we start breaking it down in the report, the first category is mill rate. So if you look to the mill rate page, you'll see we're definitely not the lowest, but we're not the highest. I use comparison communities, so I've got the village of Acme, the town of Coaldale, the town of McGrath, town of Milk River, town of Colehurst, town of Picture Butte. I used the city of Edmonton because I just wanted to take one of the big cities and tackle it. And I will say partly because I heard they were increasing their mill rate. Then I have the town of Raymond. the town of Arikana is actually very close to us demographically in many categories. So they're very close to us demographically, population-wise, very close to us demographically in assessment until we get into non-residential assessment, which becomes a key component to why their mill rate's lower. And then the city of Lethbridge and the town of Tabor. Incidentally, the town of Tabor was listed on a news article not that long ago as one of the most affordable places in Alberta to live. Well, at the end of the report, it was quite interesting as to how that's different. So if council looks, the mill rate side of things, the village of Stirling, we're sort of in that middle of the pack. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, and we're just kind of staying sort of center. City of Lethbridge almost broke the 8-point in the mill rate with their 5% increase this year. The city of Edmonton's increase on their mill rate brought them up quite substantially. So now when you start looking at the total taxes that people pay based off of a $360,000 house, the village of Stirling were a little bit higher than some of our neighboring communities, not by a great deal. So we're not doing too bad. So then when you start getting into the fees where things get really interesting, I looked at potable water first. Now, potable water I looked at the administration fee and the cost for consumption. So now when you start looking at the village on the potable water fee side of things, we are starting to see where we are actually on the lower end of the middle of the pack. So if you compare us to the village of Acme or the town of Arikana, which is the similar size in comparison to us, their fees on their water things, especially on their consumption, is substantially higher than where we're at. So fee-wise on water, we're actually doing all right. On the sanitary sewer side of things, I took all of the fees, including our $9 rate rider because of for the debenture on the force main project that we did. And we're still looking like we're in a very good position. We're sort of in that middle of the pack again. We're not on the high end, but we're right in the middle, and we're not on the low end. We're still right in the middle. Interestingly enough, many municipalities are charging a consumption rate based off of your water consumption on your sanitary as well. This is where the city and Arikana, the town of Coaldale, town of Milk River, they all charge you for based off of your water, some based off of a percentage, but many it's a straight across, whatever you use is whatever they charge you as a consumption rate on your sewers. So this is why even with our $9 rate rider on our administration bill, we're still coming in lower than many other municipalities. Then and for the town of Raymond, they have a generalized reserve fee they charge every month on the utility bill. I captured that in this category as well. Then we get into stormwater, and there's actually 3 municipalities that charge stormwater fees on their utility bills. So the town of Coaldale, city of Edmonton, and the purple one is, yes, they charge stormwater fees. Now the city of Edmonton, I used an AI tool on Google to do the average because their mathematical metric is based off of your location, your zoning, your parcel size, and a wide variety of factors, but it averages out for every parcel in the city of Edmonton pays about $6 a month for stormwater. And this is apparently becoming more common from what I've been told. Now, then I started to look at waste management fees. And again, we're right middle of the pack. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but we're kind of center of the pack when it comes to waste management fees. The really interesting one is when we get to franchise fees. So franchise fees, the village of Stirling is in the bottom sort of tier of the pack. We are definitely not the highest. Many municipalities have I shouldn't say many, some have a lower electricity franchise, but an astronomical natural gas franchise fee. And some of them are close to hitting their caps. So, I mean, we see upwards of 25% on some of the franchise fees being collected by our urban neighbors. So with us, we're sitting mid-low portion. And what a lot of this kind of translates to is on the affordability side, I believe we washed out to be the 4th cheapest municipality in this list to live. And the spread on that was within a couple $100. So really where we're at on the tax side of things, we're we're being more, in administration's opinion, we're being more transparent in what people are seeing, whereas some of our neighbors are making it up on the back end on the fees, and particularly in the franchise fee component, bringing in that revenue to municipalities. So I think realistically, the village has done a very good job of maintaining a reasonable costing for the services being provided, being core services that we
Yeah,
bill
and like
for.
the table on the last
And
page 7
on
is actually
on
pretty
our
interesting
taxes, we're not
to see that.
utilizing fees, to subsidize taxes.
I can tell you, the city of Lethbridge just raised water rates for their regional customers outside the city limit by 50%. Effective too much time. So
Picture Buttes will be going up.
yeah, so those folks that are on that system, like a Coaldale and a Picture Butte, it's going up significantly.
Well, and the part that I also found interesting about this is a lot of municipalities are lowering their mill rates, but passing increases on their fee bylaws. So it's almost a marketing ploy, and they're making more money on the fee bylaw side of things because the monthly bill, the incremental costs aren't seen as much as the big number annually. And the town of Coaldale also, to subsidize their rec program or the rec facility, put in a special tax bylaw that's $120 per parcel until the debenture's paid off.
Very helpful, Scott. I know that was a lot of work to put that together, but it makes a lot of sense and helps us have perspective. And at the end of the day, perspective means so much because you can draw the wrong conclusions. And because you don't have everything sitting in front of you. So kudos to you, and that's certainly helpful for me. And I think that if any of us get questioned about anything or challenged, as the case might be, we can chalk this up and say, hey, we're foreclosed in this group.
Comments, questions?
Good job.
So I'm happy to move that we accept the report as information, but I suggest a friendly amendment to the proposed motion that we give you direction to include that in new council's orientation, because I do think it's important to provide, here's the full picture, and even just walking people through what a franchise fee and why it matters. I don't think that's well understood.
Very good suggestion.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be opposed to it ending up on a website. The community to review available. I think it's helpful for the community, just like it is helpful for members of the council.
So yeah, make it slightly prettier from a easy to consume perspective, but yeah. I think you just do it.
Yeah, I think we trust you.
Yeah, I can turn this
Make sure we got
report,
the
no problem,
headings
and bring the
up.
report back to council for approval if you'd like, for a website submission.
And even if it's the final amount, I mean, you could break it down and get it deep into detail, but even if it's that final page, including all of the annualized costs for all of these things, that's probably sufficient.
And the color chart looks good.
Colors always helpful.
This is what I'm talking about. Show us the differences.
Any questions about that, Scott? Thanks for catching that, Aletta. I'm happy to move it. Any other questions, debates, all in favor? As carried, that brings us to item 9.6.
No, that sounds good. I'll get that rolling when I'm back.
Volunteer donation.
So this is going to be similar to the request last year. Stirling Wrestling has offered to provide their services and assistance with the bouncy castles again this year. So the events committee has graciously accepted, and much like last year, they would like to donate the profit made from the t-shirt to Stirling Wrestling in recognition of their coordinating the many volunteers that will be required to operate the bouncy castles over Settler Chase.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to your name.
And we're gonna do it in McGrath again this year. When they heard about us doing it yours, they were a pinch, and so yeah, it's.
swoop in and generate some more, right? That's perfect.
That's foreign exchange.
Matt, you got
I just had a note that, I like the idea, I support it wholeheartedly. I just would like to see in our marketing campaign, hey, buy Stirling swag, you'll support the Stirling Wrestling Club. And sometimes you drive a little bit more support for people buying stuff. Hopefully, it benefits you, it benefits us. We love to have our stuff out there. But if people say, I don't like Stirling, I don't like Trevor, I don't like Matt, but I love Drew, and they want to buy a shirt to support you, whatever it takes.
Those 5 guys that are really into judo, who did their,
So that would be my only suggestion, is make sure that as we're selling it, it's visible.
I didn't know that did last year.
You might have bought a shirt, right? An extra one.
So there's a proposed motion to approve donating that amount, net profit, so after the cost of the shirts, to the Stirling Wrestling Association in exchange for their volunteer labor during salaries.
I'll move it.
From Councillor Davis, all in favor? That's carried. Community Events Committee minutes from June the 12th.
excuse me, may I interrupt and back up?
Of course.
With the swag, I wonder if there's an opportunity, or if we could consider, there's always stuff left over and it sits there and it's dusty and it's last year's stuff. What if we could do a deal with the store, have it marketed there and sort of split the difference between the wrestlers getting half the profit and the other half going to the store for selling it?
For last year's stuff.
Any downside to that? Well, I mean, after we work the door.
I thought we sold out last year, didn't we, Scott?
No, I went.
Okay, and it's a moot point, and I should remain.
There are minutes from June the 12th there.
Yeah,
Minutes
I'll
from
sure.
subcommittees need to
Last
be
year.
approved by council, so that's why it's there, unless there were questions or anything you wanted to speak to, Gary, as chair.
Not really, but Sandra and Amy and Karma are a force to be reckoned with, and they've developed a kind of an operating plan, and it's very clear and easily understood, so thanks to everybody on the committee, but I just sort of highlight those three, not to downplay anybody else's role, but we're ready, thanks to their hard work.
Until it gets changed tomorrow.
Well, there's that. Any
You
questions?
mean there might be a version 8?
Would you like to move acceptance of those?
I will.
All in favor? That is carried. That brings us to item 9.8, which is Fifth Avenue lot prices. So I believe, Scott, here you had a conversation with Deputy Mayor Nielsen, and so there was a suggestion to bring it back for discussion.
So, Deputy Mayor Wilson had a conversation with CO in Raymond, and they were discussing lot prices and what they go for in Raymond. And the thought was possibly that we might be able to increase the prices, potentially if there is an opportunity, even maybe for a realtor to then sell them and have that affect what the comparables would be for lots within the village of Stirling. So kind of creating our market in a sense where if the lot is going for higher and it's recorded on MLS, then when appraisers come out, maybe it gets a better rating for appraisal when we sell lots in the future. I can tell council, I have tentatively sold one of the lots already. I've been in email communication since I've been away with
Doesn't mean you get
one of
good
the parties
statement.
that I spoke to previously, and they will be coming in to see me to sign a
We are doing a
purchase
performance
agreement
review
quite
next
likely
month,
next
so-
week for the value.
But no, I spoke with Curtis and they have lots.
No, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
They're smaller than your lots and we're selling ours for $100,000. Because we don't want to be undercut those that are developing in Raymond and selling lots there too. So most of the lots in Raymond are going for over $100,000. So they discussed that and thought, well, maybe we could go a little higher. I'm not saying $100,000, but maybe 75, 79, close to 80, somewhere in there.
I think we could get 80 for them.
You won't if you don't ask.
That's right. So that's my
Suggestion. Thoughts, comments, discussion?
Yeah, so, I mean, on the appraisal side of things, on the real estate side of things, when you create the product, you set the market. And so that's been the case in Raymond. When those first lots were sold behind the golf course, they were selling acre lots for 65,000. Right? And now they're selling a third of an acre for 120,000.
Yeah.
So times have changed, right? Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of our discussion last time was you set the price, and if it doesn't sell, then you can adjust the price. As long as we are not below fair market value, the MGA doesn't come in and say, hey, you've done it wrong. If you sell it for more than what our appraiser says it's worth, then so be it. Now you've set the market. You've created what people are willing to pay for it, and that sets the precedent moving forward. So if you've got somebody that's willing to pay $70,000 and they're the first one, yeah, the appraisal might be tough on that one, but every appraisal after that, they'll have at least one piece of data, and we can happily, as the village of Stirling, help them with finding their value if we run into it. I think whatever the price is, whatever we set it at, we can gauge whether we're in the ballpark or not based on how many people are willing to sign on with other.
So in Stonegate Meadows, where we're currently digging in sewer, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them sold already out of 26, and none of those are below $115,000. So I think we'd be foolish to low cut ourselves that far below somewhere that someone will build here to save themselves $50,000, even if they are working in Raymond. I mean, it's a quick drive. They do it every day. So I don't.
Good point.
Scott, has anything changed in the costing model you presented last time? Like, do we have an update from, I think it was Axel you were waiting on?
ACCO's doing line, so they're going to do trunk main extension. So they're going to be trenching that in, and Fortis should be coming out to install
I guess my
the
question
poles
was,
here
I
shortly.
vaguely remember last time, fully
ACCO's
loaded
work will
cost,
likely
you were
be done
estimating
hopefully
around
by the end of
55.
summer. So people could be ready to build by the fall. Yeah, but we would sold them all at 65, and then the small one for 60. We would scrape about, if I'm recalling, about a 20 or 30,000 profit.
Yeah, okay, that was my memory. So, Larry, do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, on the combined sale. And if we sold them for the
Well,
assessed
around
value,
80,000.
we were
Sometimes
basically
you go
break
to 79,
even-ish.
it's a little better than 80. But,
And 89 doesn't sound that much more than 80.
I mean, I think we need to be somewhat lower. And because we don't have the amenities that Raymond has. And, I think.
I would preface this though, that I do have one person offered the lot at 65 and is likely agreed to enter a purchase agreement. So if this is the direction council goes, it would be administration's recommendation that for whatever remaining lots are present,
So I heard
post
motion.
this potential, and if this person doesn't then come through, then we'll address that lot accordingly.
$79,000.
Doesn't matter. It's 80's fine.
On a smaller lot at 75.
Yeah.
With the exception for the one that's currently subject to a transaction
And the
completion.
spot,
I will caution, I think that's probably on the aggressive side, as much as Raymond's charging 120,000, there's lots of things that sold for less than that, including the most recent sale of finally, the last lot in Rob Edwards subdivision sold for 40. It's roughly the same size. It's not here, I get that. But that sat for 11 years. So
Originally priced at 50.
So that is a recent sale that was included in the appraisal report from the appraiser.
I think Shane paid 45.
Yeah, but that was probably 3 years before, like this one,
Just 2 years?
2 years ago. This one just sold within the last calendar year.
Yeah.
Steve Dixie finally sold.
But
It can always go down.
Yeah, so
If somebody negotiates stuff and says this, this, and this, takes off.
based off the dollar signs that I'm seeing at this table, I think you'll be happy to keep it at that price for a while and see where it sits.
Yeah.
My caution is, do we want development for an extra few $1,000s? Or do we want those sold and do we want the revenue of selling these lots for a little bit more? Or do we want development to happen and us to be building the community and collecting those tax dollars? Ultimately, that was the goal. That was the whole purpose for us to purchase this. Wasn't for us to make a pile of money. It was to open up development opportunities. Well, turning a slight.
I was going to likewise actually vote against your resolution for that reason. Because I agree, as the folks that benefit from the property taxes forever, that was the driver to get us into revenue sooner rather than later. And I would happily give up $5,000 or $10,000 on the front end, knowing that the sooner we get development and fill them up, we've got cash in our pockets to develop.
The last thing I want is 11 years down the road, we still.
Oh, no.
But that's what Steve Dixie did, and his price didn't change for 11 years, and it took him 11 years to sell that last lot, and it was for sale the entire time. So,
And
as
they
much as
paying taxes.
no, as much as
We need to applaud.
we say, well, that'll never happen.
But
We need to be.
there aren't any lots for sale.
But if we price ourselves out of the market, then we'll be for sale. We'll continue to be for sale. I think there's a gauged interest. I think the fact that we have somebody who's willing to sign on the dotted line, as much as we had, it sounded like a number of people previously. I think, so that's my caution too. I think 80 is on the high end, and I wouldn't, not that I don't think.
So we have a motion on the table from Deputy Mayor Nielsen, currently set at 79,000. Is there any other debate or discussion?
I'm going to be late on my vote.
All in favor?
Oh, you bum.
The motion
It was
is
you that brought up the $80.
Sorry, I should have spoken sooner.
So the motion is defeated, and as it stands, unless there's another motion, the direction we gave last time at or about COP 65, which gives us 5-ish per lot profit, will stand.
I'll make a motion to go to 70.
All right, there's a second motion from Deputy Mayor Nielsen.
It seems like an option.
Gotcha.
Set the price, same exclusion for the smaller one, I'm assuming 65, and accepting the one we currently have an offer pending. So with that revised motion on the table from Deputy Mayor Nielsen, is there any other debate or discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And with that,
Creighton horses.
You stood your ground, Mayor Masters.
it's not the first time to go the last time.
Normally how it goes with me.
We'll move into item 9.9, which is basically circling back around to the Lions Club presentation and the kiosk. And so, obviously, we'll need to give some direction for whatever information council requires from Public Works and probably some further debate at our next meeting, but I'll open it up to discussion for what you heard, thoughts, and comments.
My thoughts are, go buy some paint. Feel free. Don't do it at night. Like, that's the way I,
Not under the cover of darkness.
yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be done. I think it makes sense. And I think it's part of the bigger grand scheme of things. And even if it is for a short period of time, right? So if we're talking about the entire scope of doing everything, I mean, maybe that's a different question, but does it need paint? Yes. Does it need to be repaired so that it looks nice and not run down? Absolutely. It doesn't make sense. Should we have spent money on that long before now? Yes. And so I wholeheartedly support maintaining the asset in its current state and moving forward to getting it to the point that it's usable, even if that just means we're replacing the displays and whatever it is. But to me, I think the whole presentation makes sense and something that we should have done.
Thank you for that. Other thoughts? Other comments?
I think it's not really that big of a leap that even if there is a commercial development or something, including the other lots there, that's just part of that development. And there's another reason to turn off into there. Oh, I'm gonna look at that while I wait for my grandma in the old folks home or whatever. Or if there's a gas station there, it's taking up 6 cars worth of parking. Who cares? It's there, it's off in the corner. It's fairly easy to develop around it and decide. So I don't think there's really a negative.
It was a great presentation. I thought what the work that the Lions Company has done is fantastic on that. And I think we should move ahead with it and like we talked about, maybe there's other organizations that can chip in and help out. And it's not a big number.
So go ahead, Barry.
No, I agree. I already said my piece and you told me to shut up. So.
I don't believe I've ever.
You said mute, but I heard mute. Sorry about that. I know that's a big push.
2 questions for you. Any feedback or concerns from Public Works that need to be heard or addressed? And then number 2, if you were given that direction, from where would you extract the $16,000 worst case scenario, and what would you not do or cancel to fund it?
Well, all coordination for that. So if that answers the first question, the lines, everything's going to go through Director of Operations still, because he manages the maintenance and facility management for all of our buildings. As far as $16,000, I'd have to take a deep look at that. I was trying to come up with $39,000 to repair the FCSS building, which is actually currently in use, and we've deferred that one. So I would have to take a look, probably the same funding stream, possibly realign some LGFF dollars if possible, or look at what we've got for other building maintenance that we could pull from to pull into that. So that being said, I might just realign some CCBF stuff, but that would be something we'd have to add in then to capital planning, and I'd have to make the corresponding application to see if it'd be approved through LGFF or CCBF. Yeah, the use of those, I was going to do some realignment potentially when the FCSS building came up, but that's been put on the back burner for now. So those project applications, I've told Clark we can submit, so I would adjust those and have to go in and revise some of them. But that's just a portal access deal where we fill in the paperwork and get the application for it, and then see if the government will approve it for the funding. If the government fails to approve it for the funding, I'd have to take it out of operating dollars or reserves in some way, shape, or form.
Percentage of that on the, condition that other sources need to be found by. Or are we underwriting the full dollar value? Knowing other things could happen, but.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I look at it is there's portions of this that can be done if we're really concerned about dollars. Right, so there's electrical component of it that's about 10,000, right, which is new LED lights and replacement and upgrading electrical and all of that stuff. which I think to me is an upgrade to the existing versus some of the other stuff, which is simply just make it pretty, right? So paying interpretive boards that people can see the pictures on and read and do all of that stuff and fixing broken windows. So to me, I think we should at least underwrite that component of it to say, what's a nice way to put this? We should have done this a long time ago. So it's on us. We should be footing the bill. So that's why I think whatever it takes, right? Sometimes we can find dollars for things that we want to spend money on.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so to me, I think this is something we should spend money. And so we should find the dollars. And if our budget is that tight that we can't find that for something like this, then we probably need to look deeper and darker to make sure that we have budgeted dollars for maintenance for things like this, because we should be doing things like this on an ongoing basis.
First thing people
I'll
say,
step up myself.
it's the first thing people say when they come.
This is-
down the ground. And so I think that whatever we need to do to make this happen, we need to be prepared to underwrite the thing if that's what it takes. And that's maybe we require some creative accounting or some postponing of other things that are less visually impactful on attracting people to our community. So I speak 100% in favor of the presentation as it is. There's my 2 cents.
But I make a comment or
Not usually, but you're quick. I'll let you.
well, here's one I thought I had, is that what's been fun is to watch. This is finally something that like club itself is engaged in. We've added a bunch of new members. And so I guess the comment I would make is if we came out of here tonight and it was, hey, we got the message, we'll take care of it. Thanks for bringing it up. That's actually of less value than if there is a way that club can be involved in it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's actually worth more than the dollar amount to that club is that ability to like actually move some paintbrushes. And so anyway, that's my question is if there is a way to, but maybe that's the part, like, maybe that's the hardest part. It's when the group of young men come in the house and say, hey, what service can we do in your yard? It's like, oh, you're about to make more work for me. So like, I recognize there might be a part of that machine. And I wonder if a delegation from our end could work with him to say, how much of this can we actually help direct, even if it's 10 things less. I mean, it just would be huge for that club. Anyway, that's all I was gonna say.
Well, and I think the Lions have donated a lot to the village of Stirling in the past. And there hasn't been a lot of projects lately that they've been able to do. So I think this is great to see them.
Yeah, and I think part of it we've seen the Lions come visit us a few times over the last few years and say, hey, what should we be looking at? What should we be doing? I think the direction was always find a project and come and present it to us, and then we can make a decision, which is exactly what we've done. And so I think, from our perspective, that's all we can ask for. That service group is doing exactly what we told them to do. We asked them to find a project, and if they want to spend some money and, sweat and whatever it takes, in my mind, it's helping prevent or take care of an asset that is valuable to the community. I think we should support.
Well, and we've been asking for more community engagement, and if we get more community engagement and then say, no, we're not doing what you asked us, then that's not gonna help future community engagement.
I will really support it.
You might have a nice motion.
Maybe Trevor hasn't finished writing.
So what I thought I heard Gary say is that he'll move the council direct administration to approve phase 1 of the Lions proposal to repair and refresh the National Historic Site Interpretive Center, and further direct administration to work with the Lions to coordinate the necessary work, engaging community volunteers and potential donations to expedite the project.
Who needs AI? Seriously.
Is that acceptable to you?
I think that's what I said. You were listening.
With that motion on the table from Councillor Vickman, which letter will happily capture the
It's already in there.
in that form at some point.
Do you want to read that again?
That was impressive. I might just.
He does that regularly.
That's why- that's why it's a-
With that motion on the table, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks for that. All right,
Get the pay.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
so yeah, so work through Scott and Shane. That's the-
Sorry,
When
can
you're
I-
coming home, Scott,
Hey, Drew,
ready to
what-
work.
Next week, we'll get something coordinated.
can I just bring up something else? And it sort of fits hand in hand with what we were just talking. About. We have an asset in the community that I think we've not done the best job of maintaining. We have a community group that now is coming forward and is willing to sling paint. I feel like there was some confusion and the fact that we have to get to this point where it comes to council to say, we really, like, how do we get here? It just seems like there's more bureaucracy involved in them painting a building that belongs to us than probably should be. So I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can streamline this in the future. If somebody wants to replace the swing on the, you know, what avenues we need to go to, who do we send them to? So it doesn't always have to end up at the council's table.
I mean, I think part of it starts with us setting an allocation inside the capital budget for this kind of things, right? Whether it's 5,000 for community projects or 10,000 for, you know, like, because ultimately that comes from us setting.
Yeah, if we're talking dollar, right? If we're talking dollar, but there's people have come up to me and said, I would just, like Drew says, I would just paint it. If you just let me paint it, I'll paint it, I'll cover the cost. Can I plant flowers? I'll cover the cost. I'll do whatever I want, right? And so if we have volunteer groups or individuals willing to help us do some of this stuff, I hope that we can get out of our own way to let those people just go and flourish and do their things. And it doesn't have to come, because for some people, this is intimidating. Coming and talking to us is enough to make it not happen. And so if there's a way that we can streamline this or have a policy or something in place saying, you know, if we've got a volunteer group, what steps do they need to take to be able to buy their own paint and paint a building that belongs to the village?
Yeah, and the flip side is also that ultimately we're liable if something happens to them or the thing they're painting.
For sure,
Right.
which is why I'm talking about policy, and I'm just saying, go have fun, see you later, everybody paint whatever you want.
So as a for instance, historically at some point in the past, Lions installed benches around the community, which is a nice thing. One of them was put into a roadway allowance that violates other transportation rules. So that's the kind of thing that people can't just go do.
Sure.
Right, but I agree with you, there should be a framework and a structure. Look, my chair is shedding again.
Yeah. This is not to set that up, right? This is not the first time we've had this conversation since I've been council. And so to me, any way that we can streamline it and get rid of roadblock benefits the community, benefits the service groups, benefits everybody. If every time it has to come to council, we then say, yeah, that sounds good. We think you should spend your money on fixing our stuff. And then we just direct it back to public works. To me, it just seems like a backwards sort of.
It comes down to systems, and that's what I hear you saying. What do we learn from this? And we thought that's what you're highlighting. So can we create a system that will see that the need for this doesn't happen again? There is a system to deal with it.
Okay.
And we're not going to resolve it tonight, but just making sure that we capture this concept of, this is obviously something that we should maybe have a further conversation about. Do we need to craft a policy? Do we need to have something in place so that these people can go to a specific person, specific avenue? And as long as, you know, they're willing to spend money and it fits within what our public works and what our administration is okay with, not putting a park bench in a road allowance, those types of things, then I think we should get out of our own way.
TikTok, and I'm almost there.
Direct administration to explore some type of a policy. I'm sure that's what
You should run for council.
Then the county can get to annex it.
Oh, that's right.
Just sign that agreement. We'll take it tomorrow.
Just keep coaching.
One way to do it. once a year, like, you say, man, you should do some basketball court, you'd say, go join the Lions. That way you have a few feeders in what you're talking about, rather than the chaos. A bunch of individuals. You have some established partnerships, and you say, that's a great idea. Put back to the seniors, the Lions, the Historical Society, you make a great contribution. Yeah, I'm talking to Senator.
So what I heard Councillor Foss say is that he's moving council to direct administration to develop a policy to set our safety, cost, quality, and liability requirements for community projects and community labor contributions and report back in December 2026.
Report back in when?
December, because there's an election,
This year.
there's an end of council, sorry, 25. Yeah. Does that, would end of year give you enough time to craft something like that, Scott? Or is that unreasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I care less about costs, truthfully. I think it's like, it's making sure that, yes, if we have some costs, obviously it's gotta come back to council, because it's not,
But we gotta capture it somewhere.
and we gotta capture it.
No, that'll work.
To me, it's
I think we should vote on that motion, but then I just like to maybe make one comment before we do. I know I'm noticing a group. If the Lions Club would have had to go through this to get a pool built, I think we'd still be waiting in our backyard. The Lions did that. And they had a 3-person council that had the vision of making the community that raise kids. That's all.
So I'm happy to make that motion, but it's obviously we're getting into the weeds a little. But that captures the concept. Moving forward. So that's all.
Okay, with that motion on the table, from Councillor Foss, is there any other debate or discussion? There none, call the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. All right. That brings us to item number 10, which is the CAO report. Anything you want to speak to or highlight, Scott? No, I'm glad to see the South Grow team's already been present to build those community development profiles. That's, they got a grant to do that, so I'm pleased to see that.
I don't have it in front of me, so if you got any questions on something specific, I'd be happy to answer them, but.
And just with respect to your visitor from June the 12th about seniors housing, I would just, as you and I have talked, I would just encourage extreme caution about dealing with that individual. Like I said. Questions for Scott about the CAO report?
Yes.
Anything you want to know more about?
Yes.
Councillor Foss moves of acceptance. All in favor?
So far, I've seen.
That's carried. That brings us to committee reports. Larry, why don't we start with you?
The only committee we've had since last meeting is the Ridge Water Committee, and everything's pretty much just the way it is. And just hoping everybody uses more water. We're in good financial shape.
Good. Thank you for that. Absolutely.
Had a great orientation for Rich and very informative. Looking forward to more meetings. And
Sold.
then we have South Grow AGMs tomorrow. Oh.
My notes are in the system. The only thing I would mention is 4 mayors, their quarterly meeting. So that's Raymond, McGrath, Stirling, and Cardston, of course. We did talk about a number of things, but Cardston is leading the way on the contracts with circular materials. So that's the body that the province has contracted province-wide to handle recycling as a part of extended producer responsibility. And so they are going to mandate curbside collection, but they're going to provide the bins and the collection services because they get the revenue from all the other stuff. And then communities basically pay. So that's rolling out. Stirling is not in the first batch. We purposefully dragged our feet, didn't submit the paperwork. So the first batch of communities will go and we'll see what that looks like. And it's different for Cardston doesn't have curbside collection for garbage because they don't have the automated equipment. And because Raymond collects ours, Raymond is trying to protect their station, and so there's some politics around that. But long story short, no cost to us at this point, but that's something to keep an eye on. And then the joint use agreements with Westwind School Division are drafted. There's alignment between all 4 communities on the approach with Westwind. Sounds like that was a pretty positive process. The only difference by community is some of the fees and charges. So Cardston, in my opinion, charges a ridiculous amount for the use of fields, as an example, because they expect the school division to pay for mowing lawns and all those things on municipal fields, which is interesting. And then I'll circulate this for you. There's correspondence from the mayor of Raymond to the Reeve of the County of Warner about municipal reserve, and specifically related to the school project in Raymond. And the response is on the other side, and I think you'll just enjoy the tone back and forth between those 2 elected officials. And basically, the county's response was very similar to our school project. They basically told them to pound sand, they don't do schools. So despite the fact that county residents have the use of those facilities, the county is unwilling to contribute financially, which is unfortunate. But anyway, you'll find that amusing. Gary, you had notes on the system. Anything you wanted to speak to?
We're gonna see the Stantec report on Monday, special meeting. I will be back, fortunately, and be able to attend. We're encouraging further research into contracting and trucking, because that's always been an issue of mine for obvious reasons. So I'm working with Marion to the degree that she is interested in my perspective, addition to what I've already shared. And we have an AGM for Community Futures next week. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilor Ross.
Water question, but as I was already reported.
Thank you. There are 5 items of correspondence in the system. Were there any questions with respect to any of the correspondence? And for those of you considering a robust election campaign, if you have incurred fundraising, pre-election disclosures are due, and there's correspondence to that effect. There's no questions. Entertain a motion to accept correspondence. Councilor Davis, all in favor? That's carried. We'll come back to our closed session in a second, but before we do that, might as well take council highlights. 3 things you want to talk about tonight. Lions presentation and the National Historic Site Interpretive Center.
Yes.
Number 1. Number 2.
Schools open.
Alberta municipalities and having our vice president of villages present. Lovely. And 3rd.
Yeah, cool.
Schools open. Fire fast. Perfect. Give a let it 2 seconds to catch up there. Who would like to move that? Thank you, Mayor Nelson, all in favor? Carried. We'll thank our friends in the gallery for joining us this evening, and I'll entertain a motion to go back into closed. Councilor Davis, all in favor? That's carried. Thanks for being here. Go.